everybody and welcome back to a brand new video where today we're continuing my fan reaction series where every week after each episode aired I look through all your comments and kind of put some together into a video to kind of give a general fan perspective on each episode. So of course today we're looking at Can You Hear Me, episode 7 of series 12. We're coming towards the end now, of course we've only got 3 episodes left after this one. But thank you as always for all your comments. I think I've got a good 150 or 200 comments on this video, on this episode to be able to look through and choose from, which is always fantastic, and it's just great to see that you guys really are engaging with my videos and really interested in giving your opinions, and I just really love reading them, and you guys also helped me understand aspects of the episode that I was a bit confused about, which is just great and really helpful, so thank you. But so far obviously we've had 6 episodes so far of the series. I've been doing one of these videos for every single episode, so if you haven't seen them, do go back and check them out. They're in a playlist as well on my channel, so you can find them all there and enjoy them all hopefully, and even maybe in some future videos if you post a comment you might get mentioned on my channel as well. But I think the series 12 as a whole has been fairly well received up until this point. Obviously it had the lowlights like Orphan 55, and Praxeus wasn't maybe loved that much, but I feel like as a whole this series has been a lot more popular and promising than series 11 was, for example, just with a lot more things to get excited about, which has generally got fans quite excited about the show again, I think. But anyway, let's get cracking and stuck into Can You Hear Me? So today our first comment comes from Paige Lewis, who says, absolute snooze fest. It was a good idea, but the writing felt slow and clunky. Someone needs to talk to Chibnall about the exposition. It's completely ruined the pace of multiple episodes these last 2 seasons. Also, adding in the Aleppo storyline was pointless. Could have been infinitely more scary / interesting if it had focused on the companions and Ryan's friend, and it would have given more time to the villains who we needed to see more of. Jodie was great as the Doctor though, and I did like seeing more of the companions. I think this episode would have worked as a Doctor Light episode like we used to get, with a focus on Yaz, Ryan and Graham, and Ryan's friend for the first half, then bring the Doctor in the second half. So yeah, that's an interesting idea of having it maybe less Doctor focused. I do kind of agree about the whole Aleppo aspect, that it did feel a little bit unnecessary. I know the logic behind it was the first ever mental hospitals is why the link to mental health issues in this episode, but it also did just feel like it kind of didn't really serve much of a purpose in the grand scheme of things in this episode, I think it's fair to say. And yes, Chibnall is not great with exposition. I mean, I don't know how much of the dialogue he actually wrote. He was obviously co-written, but I imagine the majority of it was written by the lead writer in this episode. So I feel like it's maybe just more of a Chibnall era problem, the exposition, where we love to tell you what's happening and what's been happening and what's going on without actually showing you anything, which is, yeah, kind of a fundamental and quite common problem, I think, with the Chibnall era at the moment. Next up we have a comment from Alex Richardson, who says, this series so far has been fantastic, and Can You Hear Me is no exception. I'd say the best fillery episode of the series so far, on par with Spyfall 2, gave a 9 out of 10. Before this episode I thought Ryan would die in the finale, but now I think he might leave of his own accord. I think Yaz will do something with the TARDIS that forces the Doctor to make her leave, as the scene with her at the side of the road was hinting at some sort of big thing that happened in her life that she may want to undo. About the actual episode, I thought the villain was pretty menacing and the Doctor was once again brilliant. The companions had a larger focus in this episode, which was good. The big monster looked a bit dodgy. In Ryan's dream, did Tibbo turn into a Dreg, or am I going mad? Some of the horror aspects were very creepy or disturbing. The fingers, which gave an effective atmosphere. I love this episode. Also cold opening, yay! Well, almost the opposite to the previous comment, a very positive review of picking out lots of things they're looking forward to and excited about with this episode. And that's great to see. I think that it's people, obviously the use of the companions in this episode gave us a lot more to kind of work with, I think, and engage with. Obviously the actual character development that we haven't really seen very much of in the last 2 series was great to see. So yeah, good to hear that people are enjoying it. Now next up we have a comment from Abhishek Safrendo. Apologies if I pronounced that wrong, that's a little bit of a tricky one, sorry, but they say, generally it felt like a really decent episode. It had some genuinely intriguing concepts, and the 2 immortals, especially the man, really felt like they had a presence. I really liked how it focused more on the companions again, especially that scene with Yaz. My only really issue was that the pacing felt off and we didn't get to see the immortals causing much havoc. The Doctor seemed to get out the chains too quickly. I enjoyed it more than last week's episode. I also wish they could have focused more on the historical side of Aleppo. Not too much, mind you, but just a bit more. I really liked Ryan this episode. Ryan tends to annoy me generally though. If I'd rate it, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I'm really hyped for the next couple of weeks. Can't wait to see what's in store. So yeah, somebody who got a fair amount of enjoyment out of it. I agree that the 2 immortals were really quite good villains, or should have been quite good villains, if they'd actually been written to do stuff a bit more and weren't so easily defeated. I think that's kind of the main problem, that they came into this episode as, well, certainly the Zelin seemed like quite a proper sort of threat, really, I think. But then we didn't really ever see them doing that much apart from causing a few people to have nightmares. And then the woman one turns up, they go to feast on Earth's nightmares or something and then get easily defeated in 5 seconds. So that's where the pacing's off and the sort of villains are kind of let down a little bit, I think, in this story. Now next up we have a comment from Macho Gore, I think it is, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, who says, there were things I liked as well as things I disliked. Got to see some further and real heavy character development with all the companions. It added more depth and background. I didn't like how the Doctor reacted to Graham reaching out to her. Felt like she didn't care one bit about him. the Syria part of the story could have done without. Didn't really add much at all to the story other than that use her nightmares to trap the Eternals, which in itself seemed weak considering the powers they possessed. Other than the Doctor ignoring Graham, I like how they handled other mental health issues in this episode. Ryan's friends' issues reminded me of too much of myself. 6 out of 10 for me. So yes, again, another one of those that was not so happy with the main characters and the way they were so easily defeated. I think that's just a problem. As is mentioned there, like, they're supposed to be these all-powerful, immortal beings, and they've just been tricked by the Doctor and trapped in this all forever. Like, it just seemed a little bit far-fetched and unbelievable, and was just like, boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's have some character development now. Now, our next comment comes from Dalek735, who says, I genuinely think this is a brilliant episode. Zelin was a creepy villain, and the development of the characters thought through their dreams showed us so much. The fact that Ryan is worried about missing out and letting his friend down is very relatable, and Graham's dream of his cancer coming back almost made me tear up. The villain's defeat I didn't think was too bad, as it was explained in a good way and used pre-existing concepts from the episode. And personally, I loved the Doctor's reaction to Graham at the end. If she had said a big speech, it would have felt rehearsed and fake, and sometimes all you need is for someone to listen and stay with you. I'm now also really worried about this foreshadowing what happens to Graham. 9 out of 10. So yeah, I'm not sure I totally agree on the handling of the Dr. Graham thing at the end of the episode. It just didn't quite sit right for me. I've seen, and the BBC did actually receive some complaints about that particular scene, and they wrote a long paragraph explanation as to why, basically saying they wanted to show that the Doctor's socially awkward and doesn't always know what to say, so that we can identify with her as a character. And I'm like, but the Doctor's meant to be the superhero that just saves everything. So it just, for me personally, it felt like she should have said something, I think, in that moment. So that was a little bit of a shame. But I'm glad that overall you enjoyed the episode. Now, our next comment comes from Ryan Pollard. Thank you for your comment. I know you comment on pretty much all my videos, so thank you so much for always enjoying watching my videos and commenting. It's always great to read them. And he says, I really enjoyed this episode and how it seamlessly went from being an episode about immortal gods and spooky nightmares to one about mental health, depression and isolation. All these elements were handled brilliantly, and I really appreciated that they actually fleshed out the Doctor and companions and gave them some much needed character development, especially Yaz. I did not expect the writers to go as far as to reference the Eternals or the Guardians of Time. They even referenced the Toymaker, who was a Guardian, but it made the fanboy very happy. Was it nostalgia baiting? Probably, but I felt it was done right in this case. With the exception of Orphan 55, every other episode of this series has ranged from okay to amazing, which is a major improvement of the steady, monotonous drone of average that Series 11 was, and frankly, I can't wait for the last 3 episodes. So yeah, great to hear that you really enjoyed it, Ryan. Certainly, I don't think I actually really addressed this on any of my videos so far, but yes, I also love the references to the Guardians, the Eternals from Enlightenment, of course, Black Guardian, the White Guardian from, well, 70s and 80s Doctor Who, and the Toymaker from 1965 in William Hartnell's era. It's just great to kind of tie that all together and give us a good old reference. When was it? Like, it's been a while since we've had a proper Hartnell reference, I think, so it's always great to hear that. And I'm glad that, yeah, I think that it did do a really good job of that, as you mentioned, of portraying the mental health illnesses and really transitioning that into this story and not just feeling like it's tacked on at the end like we got with Orphan 55. It felt a real part of the story from early on, when we saw the Doctor kind of almost struggling with this a little bit when she's left on her own, talking to herself, feeling quite lonely and isolated. I think that was kind of just really well interweaved into this episode, which I think is why it worked so effectively. Now, next up we have a comment from Oberon Spaceport, who says, a standout episode in my mind, Can You Hear Me, is the spiritual successor to my favourite of last series, It Takes You Away. Though this new episode has more faults than the earlier, both are creative and affecting dives into the psychological challenges many of us face, and both are strong enough that their faults can be pushed to the side. But Can You Hear Me would be even more effective if the episodes of Series 11 and 12 leading up to it had done a great deal more character work to help us emotionally understand and connect to the Doctor and companions. Regarding Graham's opening up to the Doctor and her reaction, it's hard to see what was intended. Maybe it's her opening up in return, maybe it's poor writing, maybe it's a step towards the show becoming critical of her character. Any side of the debate could be right, as there just isn't enough material to narrow things down to one definitive interpretation. I plan on simply trying to be generous until later episodes decide for me. So yes, that's a really good way of putting it for the final scene, that it's just there isn't really enough content there for us to try and actually establish what they were really trying to do. I know we've read what the producers thought, or what somebody at Doctor Who thought about it from the BBC, but past that I'm not too convinced exactly what they were trying to do with it. So we'll have to leave it at that. But I also do like the mention, and it's very true that it felt like this should have had more character build-up, I think, before this episode, to suddenly just dumping all these mental health issues, which, yes, there were, and it's very clear there were subtle hints of it, of Yaz being bullied and things like that in previous episodes, but I just felt like it needed something a little bit further before we got to this point, because it just didn't necessarily feel like it was earned. I think this moment, it didn't really feel like I could believe in it and buy into it quite as much. So that's a little bit of a shame, but I still feel like it didn't completely distract from the episode. Now we've got our last couple of comments from today from Tom Johansen, who says, a very nice review, so thank you very much. And I like this episode. It was so emotional. My eyes were full of tears through several parts of the episode, an important message told in a subtle way. The darkness of the Doctor, how she cracked and opened herself to Graham just as he told her about his scare. His nightmare was so sad. Grace coming back, making the brief scene was such a dark moment. The scenes with Yaz and the policewoman were so nice, the 50p scene, the uplifting moments and the big smiles. And Ron, his friend, subtle and emotional. The villain was well played and the references to Old Who was nice. Somehow this story would have been even better if it was told in a two-parter. In all, a very nice episode, a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Yeah, I kind of tend to agree that maybe it could have worked as a two-part story, especially as it felt like it was over so quickly with the resolution of the main plot line of this episode. And I think one of those things is that the Immortals kind of, as characters, almost felt like they could have been a finale villain, really, with the amount of power they wield playing this big game. I feel like they could have added so much more into that idea that could have easily stretched out over to a big two-part finale, and then would have meant we didn't have to rush to a conclusion, could have had a better way of defeating them, and then maybe interweave some of the character stuff a bit more through the episode before having that at the end of it, or something along those lines. I don't know. I just think it could, as mentioned, it could have worked maybe better as a two-parter. And so our final comment of today comes in from Fleece in 771. I know you've been watching all of my videos recently, and thank you very, very much. He says, my initial feeling at the end, what a terrible waste of two great villains. I love the villain face-off with the Doctor. Tennant said it years ago about the Master, that when the Doctor gets a challenge of something more than a faceless enemy, you can really delve more into a battle of wits and the mind in the writing, and he is so right. I actually felt a tinge of danger and jeopardy during that exchange, and I enjoyed it a lot. Really could have been a finale idea. Character development is very well done and much needed after Series 11. I was disappointed with Praxius, but this was much better. Again, it suffers terribly from a rushed ending though. While a welcome change to Series 11, Series 12 is starting to fill everything in the kitchen sink of ideas in 10 episodes, and it's really with over halfway too much maybe in one episode for some stories this year. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode, but felt it had lost potential to be so much more with the villain that I thought was genuinely a match for the Doctor, or could have been. And yes, to finish, that is a really good point, and a great mention about what David Tennant said about this having when you have a sort of villain who is humanoid and can have that kind of face-to-face dialogue with it, really I think can add to an episode. And for a period in the middle of Can You Hear Me, when you see the Doctor and Zelen confronting each other, it really works. It really is a scene that's really exciting, and you buy into it, you delve into their characters, and it's really, really interesting. But it doesn't feel like it really goes anywhere ultimately, and they just get defeated so easily in such a quick way that it just kind of detracts from the story. So yeah, it's not an all-time classic, I think, but it does have a lot of good stuff in there as an episode. But that's just about it, so thank you all so much for your comments. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you got a shout out, I hope you appreciated that, I guess. I think it's fair to say that this was definitely a generally positively received episode. Of course, there were the odd comment I saw of, oh, Doctor Who's going too woke once again, it's being preachy and political. Obviously, I'm not going to include those comments in this video because they're just a bit ridiculous comments, frankly, and it's just not worth giving them the time of day and giving them an airing in that sense, I think. So I didn't bother go down that route, but I think, yeah, for the general audience, it was fairly well received. It had its negatives, as we say, with the villain being defeated easily, but generally the mental health aspect was very well put into this episode, and I feel was very, very important, and yeah, very successfully done. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. As always, do let me know what you thought of this video down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed it, hit that like button and that subscribe button if you are new here. I'll be getting back again very, very soon for another brand new video, but apart from that, I'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.